Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Where Are They Now? And as we have been previewing for the last 2 hours, joining us is a guy who really doesn't need a whole lot of introduction for our fans. Former Cowboys standout, basketball-wise, former college coach. We got a lot of these formers coming in here, but a current analyst around college basketball, and I'm talking one of the fine analysts that you could find. It's none other than Bryndon Manzer. And Bryndon, how are you, man?
JD, I'm good. You hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can. Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, good.
Hey, you getting used to this new broadcasting thing before we dive into X's and O's and stuff? You know, the broadcast situation now?
It's an interesting year. I mean, everybody, and no matter what profession or, you know, what you're involved in, you're making adjustments on the fly. And, I mean, I'm just happy that we're doing games, and I can still be a part of it to a certain degree. It's been different everywhere I've been. I've done a game at OSU. I've done one at OU. And in Oklahoma, we were in the arena, off the floor, but we did the game with masks on.
Wow!
And so, which was interesting, and we tested earlier that day, so you're negative and you got masks on, so that's because of the proximity of where you're on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then Gallagher, the Texas Southern game that we did Saturday, we were just outside the arena in the auxiliary gym, the practice facility. So, doing it off monitors, which I've done games off monitors or camera feeds for ESPN before. I've done in different times. So that's nothing new. But anyway, I mean, it's fine. It's just part of it. I mean, obviously Dave and John are, OSU's radio broadcasts are doing them a little bit different this year in basketball. So it's okay. But, yeah, it's definitely interesting. It kind of it's going to take a little bit to get used to it. Because you know how the CDs plop down and do the games, and especially if you've been doing it a long time, it's no big deal. But you throw these new wrinkles in, it definitely makes you a little bit less sharp until you get used to it.
Yeah, and I was telling the guy, I've had one game, Bill and I had one game experience doing that because of weather back in the day, and we couldn't get to Missouri. Because
I remember.
Joe Riddle he was up there, so he gave us the actual crowd feed, and so there was crowd noise, unlike there is right now. But we had the feed that we had to call game on, and it's different. You feel somewhat separated, literally, mentally, from what's going on because you can't see all the stuff on the court that you normally see. But, it's definitely doable, and I think the more you do it, the better off you are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just grateful that, one, that games are being played, whether I'm involved in it or not. And but two, that I'm going to get to do some. It's not a normal year. I won't be doing as much, but I mean, I've already had two games that I was on that were canceled. I'm supposed to have Oklahoma, Florida tonight on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a couple of days ago they basically canceled it and pushed it back to next year. And then Oklahoma, then they're trying. They haven't played yet, TD, and they've got a game Sunday at TCU.
Yeah.
So it's a conference opener. So they were able to get Steve Henson, former K-State great, Lon Kruger assistant. They're coming in tomorrow, and they're able to get, at least Oklahoma's going to get one game in tomorrow night that I'm doing before their Sunday game. So it's crazy for everybody. It's just it's an interesting time, but glad that some ball's being played.
And speaking of that, Oklahoma State's played 3 games already, 3 in the win column, and generally, and you've done one of them, and you've been around the program a lot, so you can make this assessment and analysis. But other than the obvious that Oklahoma State has a lot of individual talent up and down that roster, perhaps more individual talent and playmakers than they've had in a while, other than that, though, what do you see?
Well, obviously they're guard heavy. And they've got a lot, but they've got a lot of options there. I think, they were really athletic and then have some length. I know, which is what Coach Boynton has recruited to,
mm-hmm.
and that a lot has to do with his background If you look at Frank Martin teams, or even what Brad Underwood was wanting to do, length and athleticism on the perimeter, so you can have it at both ends of the floor. And well, obviously, a really athletic team. All these guards that can do different things. I mean, there's a couple of freshmen that, for those that have been watching, and Walker and then probably Moncrief, that gets you a little bit excited. There's some raw ability there. I thought Walker was great last night. When they went to the zone, he's really good at the front. I talked to Mike Boynton a little bit about this before the Texas Southern game, but Walker, and I put it this way to Mike, I said, well, it looks like Walker is literally, as a freshman, interested in actually guarding somebody.
Yeah.
And he is. And he's pretty sound. He uses his length to get back and close out and contest. He doesn't leave his feet. He keeps guys in front. So there's definitely some good things there. And that, good win last night, really good. Anytime we went on the road, I still think, I'm not sure Marquette has figured out how to attack that zone yet. Hopefully by, what time is it? 5:13. Hopefully they figured it out by now. But
they hadn't for 2 hours, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh! But Coach Boynton went to it, and I'm sure they never thought they were going to play it for that long of a period of time. Basically, the rest of the game, and made the good decisions to stay with it. And so anyway, yeah, lots of talent. Cade Cunningham, obviously fun to watch, and tremendous talent. It'll be interesting to see. They get 5 or 6 games under the belt and get the conference, how it translates, because the league is way, way, way good, and I think we've got 3 pretty high-level conference games today, right?
Yeah, we're watching one right now as Texas is locked up in a tie with 46 seconds to go with North Carolina. And Texas seems to be, well, they were the real deal in the first half. The shots quit falling in the second half, but they look like they could be a thorny opponent all year long. Yeah,
they basically have everybody back. Their guards are really good. They always have athleticism, talent. Usually have big bodies, and they're good. West Virginia's basically has everybody back. They have the best bigs in the league. Of course, I'm a huge Hugs fan. Talked to Kirby Hocutt at the football game the other day. A little bit about Chris Beard, and they're excited and think they had a tough loss against Houston. Kelvin's team's really good, but
right.
I mean, anyway, Kansas is not playing great, but they will be at some point. Coach Steph will get them going, and then Baylor's way good. And then there's half the league right there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the OSU, because outside of Likely, they're super young. I mean, really young. Even Cade, you have to be careful. Putting too much on him to make every great play. He's still a young guy, but certainly the talent is there, and they have a chance to have a nice year.
I kind of compared today, and it might not be a good, I'm going way back, way before your time. You're essentially a youngster here, but I kind of compared Cade Cunningham with Lynn Swann in the NFL, in that when you saw Swann, he looked so smooth, didn't look like he was running very fast, didn't look like he was really working real hard, and maybe just ran under a ball and made it look easy. But the great ones make it look easy. They don't look like they're laboring to be productive. And Cunningham has that look right now, and albeit just 3 games into his career.
Yeah, no, and really the game is slow to him. It really is. I mean, there's only been a couple of times in each of the last 2 games, and both times he ended up charging. Maybe each time it was picking up his third, I'm not sure. But
could be, yeah.
Where he tried to force it a little bit. But, I mean, he doesn't get in a hurry. He's big, he's strong. The game's slow. I think that what will need to happen is over time is the teammates learn to play off of him. Because he's going to be able to force teams, hopefully, in help situations. And he may not get credit for an assist, but he's going to start to help. And if the ball moves, I mean, there's guys are going to get looked. And obviously they're moving him around a little bit. There's certain matchup opportunities for he and Ice, for that matter, in the post. I think over time what I'd like to see is, move him a little bit on the perimeter more, and then later in a possession, get him coming up the floor from somewhere flat along the baseline where the defense had to move. That's the only thing with I think with a guy like that, you still got to move bodies to help create space, and I think they will do that over time. But he's going to be a guy where he might have a dozen points one game or 10 points one game and be the best player on the floor. A lot like Ice. Those guys just make winning plays, and their stat stuffing will vary from game to game. It'll be just if some of these other guys can consistently go score off of him. Are you going to? Is that going to be Walker? He's at 16 and 19, right? The last two games, is that right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big key for them. Another big key is Caleb Boone has got to play better and stay out of foul trouble because he's getting league play. Oklahoma State's small anyway, but they're going to need him to be available and play good.
Yeah, I had mentioned that today, and not getting on the guy, but the facts are facts. He plays about 15 minutes a game because of fouls, and he's compromised in those 15 minutes because he's got a couple and he's got to lay off people, and he's really not. He's got to be on the floor more than 15 minutes, in my opinion, when we start playing real teams with sides in the middle. So that's a no-brainer right there. And he does not appear, Bryndon, and I know we're only 3 games in, he does not appear to be playing with the same overall confidence that he took out of the end of last year.
Yeah, no question. I agree with that. It's interesting. When would that have been? Week and a half ago, Cowboys had an inter-squad scrimmage on a Saturday morning, and I was able to go watch. And he was really good, like really good. And so it's there, and obviously showed flashes last year. He kind of seems like a guy that a couple of negative plays may affect how he feels about himself, which basically is what you're saying, TD, about confidence. But he's really defensively, you got to become a solid position defender. He's got to get around guys in the right spot. He's got to be up the floor. He can't let guys body up with him because he's just not physically strong. He's come a long way with Jake Manzer, but got a ways to go. But and then obviously away from the ball, he's got some length and good timing that he can protect the rim some. But he just physically, it's tough. He's got to really become a smart, intelligent position defender because when he's out of position, you don't have the strength. It sounds weird, but I've always told guys, the stronger you are, the less likely sometimes officials going to, make a call that goes against you.
Correct. Yeah.
So when he's out of position, it becomes obvious, if that makes sense. So he's got to keep working on that. And he's a great kid. I know they love him, and just needs to get a little confidence in him. But he's about as important a piece long term as anybody. Outside of Ice and Cunningham.
You've coached this game enough, and I guess this is always the option. You'd rather have too much talent than not enough talent. That's a no-brainer. But how long do you see it taking for guys to be given their roles with this team, but more so accepting the roles they are given? And that's always, as we have seen over the decades, sometimes that's two different things, giving it and accepting it. But you got guys who could start but are now coming off the bench. How willing do you think they're going to be to continue to play that role?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's such an interesting year because of COVID. You have less non-conference games to learn some of that. So you may have to make some decisions on that a little earlier than maybe you would. But at the same time, because of COVID, you might be without some guys from time to time. So if you're 11th on the roster, you can become 6th real fast.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it too, giving them enough that they can be prepared. And so of his guys there, there's not You really don't look at anybody and say, there's no way that he can help us in any form or fashion. There's not one guy that, doesn't have something to develop. But I will say, I think that, not for just Coach Boynton, for a lot of coaches, when you got all these guys and you recruit them and you tell them you're going to give them a chance and you want to honor that, but you can only play so many.
Right.
And last night you didn't have Harris or Anderson. I think that also helps make it easier. You are guard heavy too. That makes it harder to get a rotation.
Sure.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a couple of nice players out of the equation, but they're not there. I think it kind of helps. Not in an overall sense, but helps in figuring that kind of stuff out. But my eyes tell me, right? Ice and Cunningham are going to play.
Sure.
The Boones are going to play. Flavors is going to play just because he's your purest of shooters probably on this team. Bryce Williams, he's tough. He kind of does everything well. Obviously played real well last night. And then all of a sudden you got Walker, who is getting opportunities early in his career because he cares about defense. Well, then he's getting the minutes, and then he has a couple of good games offensive. So, there's 8 guys right there, TD.
Yeah.
So, you start thinking of it like that. So it's 8 if you throw in Moncrief. Obviously he's going to play. So anyway, it'll be tough. But you can't play 11. You can get everybody in just a little bit and make them happy, but it'll be interesting to see. But Coach Boynton's also got to have everybody ready because, a couple of positive tests could change things.
And another guy who had, I put this in quotes. You're not seeing me do the quotes here, but who has to play some would be Kuma because of his position and his size, depending on matchups, fouls, conditioning, all that stuff, COVID. So he probably is floating around the has to play bubble as well. But your point is well taken. We've already mentioned 11 or 12 guys who have to be ready to play, but we also know the reality of it all is, and you coached it, so when you think you should be playing and you're not playing, or you think you should have this role and you don't have this role, and you're halfway through the year, sometimes the excitement level, the energy level, the acceptance level is not there.
Yeah, I think, one of the a part of coaching that's not talked a lot about, probably because this is kind of a feel thing, and Eddie Sutton is as good as you're going to have, but with your role players or your non-stars, your non-top 2 or 3, you kind of develop these, here's what we want out of you, and if you do this, you're going to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of know when you're going to do that. And I was obviously one of those. But I by the end of my first year, I could almost substitute myself knowing, this is probably time, not when I thought I should go in, but when I knew Coach Sutton thought I should go in.
Right.
And here's what you're going to do. You're going to go in and for Randy and Brooke and give them a rest and not screw things up. And if you do that, you're going to play. And then as time went on, there was a little more freedom to shoot open jumpers as trust became. But it's hard I think for coaches to kind of feel their way through sometimes who to play. I don't think that everybody has that, I'll be honest with you. But it's definitely a challenge. But, Mike Boynton's a good communicator, and there's going to be a couple of these nice players. We didn't even mention Avery Anderson, who obviously has some things that are positive that he does. Because I'll tell you, he didn't even play last night. But to me, if Anderson doesn't turn it over and doesn't take marginal shots,
mm-hmm.
I'd play him a lot.
Yeah, me too.
But if he turns it over and takes marginal shots, then that's going to make it easier for Bryce Williams or whatever to get those minutes. So it'll be guys are going to have to be accepting of playing a role because it's important. It's important to do your job and do it well. If you want to get on the floor, you have to be willing to do it.
You kind of alluded to it early and in the closing minutes we have here. And Texas did beat North Carolina in a heck of a game. And, as long as you got Coleman on that team, you got a chance of winning any time you play, in my opinion. But how do you see? Let's start with Kansas because we always do. They don't look as intimidating without Doak and Dotson. I mean, I know it's early, and they play. When you play Gonzaga, you're not going to look great if you're not great at the time. But how do you see the league kind of shaken out at this point? And that's probably a tough question because it could change. It could change looks maybe 100 times between now and the end of the year.
Well, I mean, assuming you get the 18 games in, and I feel this way whether everybody gets 5 or 6 on conference or the dozen that they would get normally. Kansas point guard, but with Dotson not coming back, and you having to kind of thrust Garrett there some. And they're not big. I mean, McCormick was 1 of 9 yesterday, I think, something like that.
I think you're right. Yes.
Yes. They're going to be in the mix because Bill Self is there, but for example, I think something like Oklahoma State, because of personnel, you would match up pretty well with Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
I think Baylor is really, really, really. I think Butler is a stud. He was last year. Scott Drew thinks he's taken a couple steps, which is saying a lot. Tech is really talented, and they're going to guard as well as anybody in the league, and that travels over an 18-game schedule. It's kind of like Coach Sutton's teams were, Kelvin Sampson's teams were. They're going to win a lot of games just off of that, let alone personnel. And then West Virginia, depending on those guards, make any jumpers from the perimeter, which they really haven't the last couple of years. Those to me are the top 4 teams. Texas, obviously, off to a great start, but the longevity of it, we'll see. But anyway, the preseason polls don't mean anything, TV, but I think what was, the coaches voted was about right. I would have probably had Tech and Texas flipped and Oklahoma State and Oklahoma flipped at 6 and 7, but I don't know. We'll see. It'll be Baylor and Kansas will be in the middle of it for sure.
And as I always say, you could finish 6th in this league and be pretty darn good. I mean, that's just the reality of it all. That you're in a league where it's difficult to take on the Giants night in and night out. And who knows if they're going to be Giants with COVID? They may not be healthy, and that changes things as well. So hey, I always appreciate your time, man, and we enjoy seeing you on TV, obviously on the Cowboy. I guess you got the full ESPN Plus menu as far as Oklahoma State's concerned this year, I would assume, you and Mike Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that are on there. I know the Big 12 still got that package, and I'll be around some. It's just kind of, like I emailed today and said, here's a game. They're sending one or two at a time, but I'll be there. I mean, we crammed a lot in here, TD, in 30 minutes. I think it's because I've only done a couple games. I got a lot to say right now.
Well, that's good. We didn't want to get you in a point where you were talked out and you had nothing to tell us. That wouldn't have been a good idea at all.
Just couldn't wait to pretend how smart I was, I guess.
Oh, hey.
But no, I enjoyed the CD. I always appreciate you, man.
Hey, we had a good time as usual, and we'll have you back as the year goes on. There'll be some surprises. There always are. And we'll be talking about those as the year goes on. But hey, stay in that remote mode, wherever you are. Think remote, and people won't even know you're doing it. They'll say, "This guy he must be right there, courtside," because he sounds just like it. But anyway, hey, I know you'll do it. You got it down, Pat. We will be back in touch with you again shortly, and see if things are going the way we just laid them out. But thanks again, Bryndon. I appreciate your time, bud.
Yeah, anytime. Let's do it again. I'll see you soon, TV.
Okay, bud. See ya. That's Bryndon Manzer.